5 million Israelis are entering shelters, and a swarm of Houthi drones is flying over Tel Aviv. The defenses are being exhausted, allowing the missiles to launch. What is happening? Is this a new strategy used by the Houthis? Meanwhile, the US is offering an enticing deal never before presented to any Arab country. The church announces that Netanyahu will not be able to face the Houthis without a ground operation. At the same time, the spokesman for the Houthi movement warns Saudi Arabia not to make mistakes, and Tel Aviv sends delegations to Doha to push the negotiations forward to stop the war in Gaza. Turkey is providing Tel Aviv with supplies through the Mediterranean, while Cairo announces a permanent ban on Syrians entering the country. Germany asks Russia to leave Syria, and France plans to destroy what remains of Syria's strategic weapons after an Israeli strike that caused an earthquake in Aleppo. On the other side of the world, Russia is advancing in Luhansk, and the US acknowledges supplying Kiev with weapons since the start of the war, to which Russia responds. Greece rebukes NATO for opposing Russia. Houthi strikes on Tel Aviv continue, and US planes retaliate from Yemeni airspace. The smell of gunpowder spreads across the region as the Israeli Broadcasting Authority announces the sound of consecutive explosions in several areas within Tel Aviv and the occupied territories, spreading panic and fear among the settlers. In this context, several Israeli media platforms, including the newspaper Yedioth Ahronoth, reported that around 5 million Israelis were forced to wake up last night and enter shelters following the launch of several Houthi missiles. But what happened before the missiles arrived? That night wasn't over without a swarm of suicide drones launching into the skies to exhaust Tel Aviv's defenses, allowing the Houthi missiles to reach their target without interception. Could this be the strategy discussed by the leader of the Houthi movement, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, or is it a military strategy revealed today by the Houthis? This is what several media platforms in Tel Aviv and the West have been reporting. The second Israeli channel hosted several political and military analysts, who all agreed that the Houthis might continue to strike Tel Aviv indefinitely, even if a deal over detainees is reached, according to the channel's report. It seems that the echoes of these voices have reached Washington, where the White House decided to abandon war policies and move toward a political solution with the Houthis. The US has begun working on a painful negotiation card. The Lebanese newspaper Al-Mana, close to the Lebanese factions, revealed that the US is moving to stop the Yemeni operations against Tel Aviv, having sought assistance from a Gulf state and Iran. According to the Lebanese newspaper Al-Akhbar, citing close Houthi sources, Washington is offering to de-escalate aerial strikes against the Houthis in exchange for the Houthis halting their escalation against Israel. The sources also indicated that this American move aims to end the attacks on Tel Aviv. They noted that the same request had been made by the US in January last year, but the American promises to halt the war on Gaza were not fulfilled. This was a condition set by the Houthi movement. The sources added that the return of Omani mediation efforts through the visit of Oman's Foreign Minister, Badr al-Busaidi, to Tehran aimed to create a broader framework for pushing toward an agreement in Yemen. It is confirmed that Washington seeks to reach an agreement that includes closing what is called the support front before the current administration departs, as the US makes another attempt to revive the peace process in Yemen with a new offer to Sana'a, in partnership with France, and through intermediaries in Oman. Reuters reported that the UN envoy is on her way to Muscat to resume negotiations with the Sana'a delegation under direct supervision from Paris. Some experts suggest that Washington and Paris have agreed to offer financial incentives and give the Houthis a share of natural gas resources, including the right to levy tolls on ships passing through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, in exchange for a complete halt to strikes on Tel Aviv and lifting the naval blockade on Israeli-owned vessels and those dealing with Netanyahu's government. The Houthi side responded by saying they would stop all of that in exchange for ending the war on Gaza and allowing food and medicine to enter. Later, the military spokesman for the Houthis, Yehia Sari, issued a statement confirming that the forces were on high alert to face any threats from the Americans, adding that they were capable of defending Yemen and its sovereignty, and that military operations were part of supporting Gaza, according to a statement published by Reuters. From the burning skies of Tel Aviv to the Red Sea, which has turned red due to the fires raging within it, a report from the U.S. Naval Institute for Military and Geopolitical Sciences states that for over 6 months, the scene for the sailors of the USS Eisenhower and its accompanying destroyers has been one of water, extreme heat, and missiles. The Houthis targeted the British ship, the Ruby Mar, in February 2024, causing it to sink, the first ship to suffer damage. The aircraft carrier Dwight D. Eisenhower left the Red Sea in June 2024, leaving the American destroyers to protect the region. These carriers have witnessed surprise missile attacks and suicide submarines. In related news, prominent Houthi leader Mohammed Ali al-Houthi made an official statement saying that the countries opposing them received a message of escalation, which was misinterpreted based on their media. He added that they are ready to face any escalation intended to distract from the Palestinian cause and sent a special message to Saudi Arabia, stating that de-escalation was an opportunity to reassess their wrong calculations, as they once thought Yemen would fall in 2 weeks. He emphasized that any misreading would result in failure and that their infrastructure was in danger, according to his statement on Al Masirah channel. As for the negotiations, Tel Aviv is working tirelessly to stop the damage caused by both the Houthis and the Palestinians. The Hebrew minister, El Cohen, announced that the talks in Qatar are ongoing, and there is a possibility of progress, with the potential to send a high-level delegation. He also mentioned that some gaps between the parties have been narrowed, but there are still crucial details under discussion that have not been resolved. The response to the minister's statements came shortly after. In another context, the Hebrew newspaper Kan revealed, through maritime sources, that Turkish commercial activity to Tel Aviv has increased during the period from May 3 to December 7, 2024, which coincided with Ankara's declaration of cutting trade relations. Turkish ships passed through Egypt via the Mediterranean, reaching the ports of Haifa and Ashdod, with cargoes varying from oil, chemicals, vehicles, and essential goods, according to the report. From Tel Aviv's friendship and the chess game with the Houthis to the ongoing plans in Syria, in which all the world's countries are participating, the shocks are beginning to come from Cairo first. Cairo announced a warning to travel and airline companies not to accept any Syrian passengers on upcoming flights to Egypt, except those who have temporary residency for non-tourism purposes in the country. This includes Syrians who have European or American residency, and they must obtain security approval. The decision also includes preventing the entry of Syrians married to Egyptian women without security approval. Meanwhile, Major General Ahmed al-Shar, the military operation leader, was preoccupied with receiving the European delegation, which included the German and French foreign ministers. They announced that the Russian military presence in Syria is not a European decision but a sovereign one for the Syrian leadership. However, they also mentioned that the time is right for the Russians to leave Syrian territory. The German Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that Russia has supported Bashar al-Assad for many years and committed heinous crimes there, and must be held accountable. The French foreign minister summarized the issue with a call from Damascus to destroy Syria's chemical weapons stockpile, continuing the process of eliminating Syria's strategic ammunition. In another context, Clash Report published a report stating that Tel Aviv has controlled more than 500 square meters of Syrian land since the fall of Bashar al-Assad, an area equivalent to Los Angeles or slightly smaller than Singapore. In the past 12 days, an additional 4.4 square meters have been added, equivalent to the area of Manhattan, according to the site. Meanwhile, the Hebrew army targeted Aleppo with a strike on one of the most important centers for the production of Syria's strategic weapons and high-precision tactical missiles, according to BBC. Shifting away from the Middle East, let's move to the latest news from Russia, Ukraine, and the West. Russia is consuming new territories. A soldier who does not dream of victory does not deserve to carry a weapon, said Putin. Yes, and according to Sputnik news agency, the Russian army surprised everyone with the announcement of liberating a new town in strategic Luhansk. This came alongside the U.S. Secretary of State's announcement of the possibility of direct confrontation with the Russian army. He stated that Washington had armed Kyiv well before the start of the Russian military operation, prompting a response from Maria Zakharova, the spokesperson for the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She stated that the war in Ukraine was caused by this direct American supply and an attempt to pit Ukraine against Russia. Meanwhile, the former Greek Deputy Minister of Defense, Kosmas Ioannou, said that halting the transfer of Russian gas to Europe was tantamount to suicide. He confirmed that halting the flow of Russian gas to the European Union via Ukraine would worsen the already existing problems in Europe's energy sector.